and thank you, distinguished members. I will, in accordance with the President's directive, I will be short and sharp and answer a few questions, in particular, 2-3 of them that have come up continuously, and then of course I'll yield the floor to my colleagues to also chip in on others. The few questions I want to talk about is the issue of my person and whether my approach to handling the activities of the central bank, if so nominated. I'd also like to say a few things about one particular topic that has come up repeatedly in different forms, and of course that is exchange rate. And then also would like to say something about another thing that has also come up repeatedly, which is inflation, the high cost of goods. Okay. Now, in terms of the person you are considering for nomination to the position of Governor of Central Bank, I want to emphasize that this is all I know, in the sense that my calling has been a calling of banking. My calling has been a calling of dealing with institutions that have a culture of compliance. Okay, so not only even in government, when I was in the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, I had a reputation for doing things properly. And I'm not about to compromise that reputation for anything. So if there's any doubt about that, I want you to dispel your minds of it. I am absolutely not prepared, and I have no intention of compromising that. Then, on the issue of foreign exchange rate, which everybody's been talking about, and naturally is very worrisome to everybody, very, very worrisome. It goes without saying, quite frankly, that for the sort of country we want, we do need to have an exchange rate that is stable. For a country that we all dream of, we need to have an exchange rate that is stable. And quite frankly, there are short and medium-term measures, but I would say something about the short-term measures, because that really is what bothers most people today, understandably. The medium-term measures have to do with balance of payments, and over a period of time, like the sort of things that are being done already with respect to ensuring that you're getting more petroleum resources and diversifying the economic base of the country. That, I believe, will continue by the present administration, and of course they take time. So I think we should take that as a given. The more immediate is what we need to look at. And my sense is that there are two very important issues that we would have to address when and if we are nominated by these hallowed chambers. Number one, it is that of what I would term an operational issue. Right now, you will have a situation where, and we all know this, we can argue about the figures, the numbers, but we are aware that there are unsettled obligations by the central bank. We are aware there are unsettled obligations. Whether it's 4 billion, 5 billion, 7 billion, I don't know. But definitely the immediate priority will be to be able to verify the authenticity and the extent of what is owed. And then, of course, once we do that, we need to promptly find a way to take care of that. It will be naive for us to expect that we'll be making too much progress if we're not able to handle that side of the foreign exchange market. Number two, apart from the operational, there's one that is more system related. And that involves ensuring that we come up with rules that are open, that are transparent, and that any of the players in that business understands. We cannot reasonably expect serious foreign investors, portfolio investors, foreign direct investors, and now we're talking about short term, please. We cannot expect that those players who generally have an impact on your markets will do so if you do not have an open, transparent system that everybody understands and can rely on, and that is not subject to one day it is one way and the other day, the next day, you review without any notice. In setting up those guidelines, one will obviously carry relevant stakeholders along, and the comment was made earlier that one should be ready to engage people and to hear views, and that will obviously be one of the major objectives, to be able to get stakeholders together, understand where things are, and promptly, very quickly, come up with a strategy and a game plan that is well known to each other and then to everybody, and then implement it. So I believe that with those two things, though they may seem simple, but they are far less simple than they appear, those two immediate steps that we'll take will go a long way to ease up the restrictions we're having right now in terms of people wanting to come in. Those that want to do business in Nigeria, they want to see that the coast is clear. And if they don't, they will continue to hold on to their money. So that's something that I want to share with you so that you will understand that this is the short-term measures are ones that will be very, very important to us, myself and the team. Once we get in, it's something we will address right away. Now, how soon that will be done and put behind is a different matter, but I know that the impact will be such that we will be able to have greater liquidity coming into the market, and the loss of the seeming withholding of confidence will come back in. So I thought I should mention that. Then, on the issue of inflation and the issue of cost of goods, another one that quite frankly should be worrying to anybody. And as members of these hallowed chambers, I know that you all see your various constituents regularly, and you'll be hearing a lot of complaints, Again, there are longer term measures, there are medium term measures, and I believe that some of those measures are being taken already at the fiscal side to at least rein home a lot of the things that had happened in the past. You look at the removal of oil subsidy, you look at the tightening up on payments being made on taxes and a whole host of other areas. But in the short term, I want to explain that a couple of things will be very important to us. And I'm answering this question, I think I'll be answering one or two others. When you look at the dimension of inflation, just very quickly, the jury is out as to what the real components of inflation are. The jury is out. We certainly will be going to evidence-based monetary policies. Evidence-based monetary policies. We shall not be making decisions based on a whim. There will be need, I believe, to significantly revamp the infrastructure in the central bank with respect to data and to ensure that our data gathering capacity is significantly enhanced so that we can make decisions based on proper data. That's key in measuring your inflation. Now, on the issue of inflation and the issue of price of goods, as I said, the jury is out. Some people will say it's structural, some people will say it's money supply, but let us say it's a combination of both. If indeed it is inflation, food inflation, we know what to do. We need to ramp up production of food. That's a given. We have to ramp up production of food. And that is an effort that the fiscal side will tackle and is tackling, and we would collaborate with them to ensure that that happens. If it is energy, we know the challenges of energy. That if you are importing things into the country which have an energy component, you automatically are importing inflation, okay, in some sort. So again, the whole objective of ensuring that the energy side of the country is ramped up, we also will work very closely with the fiscal side to ensure that that happens. Finally, the big issue that comes up many times is the issue of money supply. Now, I think we all know, and that's why I said I hope this answer will answer different questions. The issue of money supply and the way that money has gone up tremendously in Nigeria. That in its own has major effect on inflation, major. And I've seen some relatively reliable studies that have shown that in the past 10, 15 years, at least 50% of inflation in Nigeria has been as a result of money supply and budget deficits and deficit financing. Let me not say budget, deficit financing. So it is a problem. It is a big problem. At least it certainly has been over a period of time, and it's something that we have to face frontally. And I want to assure you that going forward from the Central Bank of Nigeria, we will do everything possible to ensure that we work closely with the fiscal side and ensure that, as you know, the issue of deficit financing does not become a problem for us. We cannot afford to have the big challenges that we have had from deficit financing, which in effect has had the throwback that many of you here are concerned about. So I think that those are assurances I can give you coming from our side, that we will align, understanding what the fiscal side is, will work, maintain collaborative working relationship, and ensure that things do not get overheated or even get heated at all, because my view is that at this point in time, we cannot afford these kinds of excesses that we had in the past. So I hope that answers that question. Then there's the issue of internal control of the bank. My answer to that, quite frankly, is a very simple one. I believe that the central bank, under our watch, will have no choice but to embrace a culture of compliance. A culture of compliance. And that goes for even the acts that we're talking about, because the question was asked, why is it that the 2007 Act was in place and yet people, breached it as they liked? We won't have that during our administration. We are not going to tolerate such. So we will not wait for oversight to come and tell us what to do. We will ensure that by the time the system is passing through us, we catch it and we deal with it. And we will have zero tolerance for abuse of compliance. That is a cultural shift, a change in mindset, but we will make sure it happens. We will definitely make sure it happens. And I also want to emphasize that one of those key mechanisms for oversight involves members of these hallowed chambers, where we recognize the fact that we have to work closely with these hallowed chambers to ensure that we deliver on compliance. We recognize that, and we will do that. We are clear as to what the Act says. We are clear as to how we need to visit the House and share the things we are doing, and we will do so, because now that there's a reset in the Senate, or we propose to have a reset in the central bank, we are hoping and we are appealing also to the members of these hallowed chambers to work with us, and we'll ensure that every 6 months, from what I gather, there has to be consultation, discussions with the Senate. Whatever the 2007 Act says, we need to comply with it. And that is the reason why I personally believe that that document is quite a strong, robust document. I feel that what has lacked there has been the issue of implementation and compliance. Fine, there may be rooms to talk about certain areas here and there. Yeah, and maybe it's a good enough time, although I think that the bigger issue, rather than looking at the document, is to ensure, okay, let us test this for a while and see how the culture of compliance takes root in the central bank. So with those, I think I would like to yield over to my colleagues to take a stab at one or two other issues that have been raised. Thank you.
Distinguished senators, I will just address a few of the points, even though Mr. Cardoso's remarks have covered most of it, but I think a lot of the questions and points made by distinguished senators are very germane and important to the country's economy at the moment. I think it was mentioned that 370 industries have shut down in the recent past. Senator Ivan Yuba mentioned about the modular refineries, whether, if that is done, that would definitely reduce the pressure on the foreign exchange because we'll stop the importation. But I'd like to say that, and also the intervention issue raised by Senator Ojus Okalo, are we going to continue as a central bank to intervene in all sectors? I think it's important to point out, like Mr. Cardoso had mentioned, that this central bank is going to strengthen governance and follow monetary policies as its lead, because we are lucky that under this new administration we have a very strong Ministry of Finance, because Ministry of Finance is responsible for fiscal policies and the central bank for monetary. So a lot of these interventions, as is done everywhere else in the world, is on the fiscal side. Central bank's job is to drive the policies that will maintain price stability, control inflation, and exchange rates. He talked about in the medium term, the big elephant in the room with the exchange rates being balance of payments. But I even feel that what we do today with the support of this Senate and the executive arm, that is the Ministry of Finance, we can bring that forward even to the near term. Take export, for example. Any one of us traveling to London today, go to any of the British supermarkets. You will see bananas from Ghana, corn from Kenya, avocado from South Africa. It's in the shelves. But we cannot export ours because we shoot ourselves in the foot. Every produce we get, before we get to the port, they'll keep it in the port for 2 weeks. Therefore, you can no longer export it. And once you export, what do you get? You get foreign exchange inflows. So we have to decide. This Senate will support the executive and drive the fiscal measures. It's not the job of central bank, like you said, to import fertilizer and palm produce. It's not our job. But we will ensure that we drive the policies that maintains price stability for those industries to thrive, for export to thrive. And we need to do it very quickly. So it's just to support what my governor has said, that we will ensure that there's a new strengthening of corporate governance, and like Senator Shomole said, thinking outside the box. I think even the executive has started that, because the plans for revenue collection, if that goes well, that's one problem solved. The first two things this government did was to stop the leakages. The subsidy and the unification of the exchange rate, very important to stop leakages, but it's causing a lot of pain. But once we put all these other things in place and drive with a strong central bank focusing on its mandate, we will see a change both in the short and the medium term. Thank you very much.
Let me just thank my colleagues and then point out that these people are new. They are just coming to inherit a very deep hole. All we can ask them is to think out of the box and bring new initiatives to try to stabilize the naira, stabilize the economy, and see how they can fill the trillions of outstanding indebtedness. The incoming CBN governor pointed out that we were spending monies based on just printing that no revenue was coming. We were not actually making money, but we were spending money. He also said that we have already outstanding billions owed in foreign exchange by the central bank. So even if we make money now, the result may not show immediately because of the outstanding debts that we have to pay. I hope I understood you. So that is almost like a caveat. You are trying to give us advance warning that we should not expect immediate miracle, but that with compliance to regulation and the laws, that definitely you will turn things around. I think I got you in that direction. In other words, you are renewing the hope of Nigerians that things are going to be turned around for the better. The Deputy Senate President pointed out that there were lots and lots of infractions which possibly led to all the investigations that are going on today. I do know that if we keep you here, more questions will come. So every person here would like to ask a question. But I know that you will only answer based on your previous knowledge. When President Obama was elected, and he started making appointments, he started calling former chief of that, former that, the youths were angry, and they said, this was not the change we expected. And he answered them, you cannot know Washington until you get to Washington. No matter what we ask you and you answer now, you cannot know the danger or the possibilities until you get into the books of the central bank. You need to be right inside. You need to evaluate the situation as much as you are determined to turn things around. But you need to know exactly where we are. And we can only do so if we confirm you and all records are made available to you. Senator Abu, is there anything you wanted to say to them? And so that we can go.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Ishiako Abo. I represent Adamawa North. You have rightly put it, Mr. President. They need to get in there before they know what is actually they are going to face. My challenge, or rather a question is, recently, the Central Bank of Nigeria published financial statements and audit report of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And when that financial report was published, there was wide cry. Everybody was crying, outcry against it, because it does not conform with the international financial reporting standards. That means it is materially misleading. Are you going to withdraw that misleading financial statements when you get to office and audit and report and get correct financial report and give Nigerians? Or what will you do differently? Thank you.
Senator Wadada.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I remain Senator Ahmed Wadada Aliyu, Nasarawa West, Senatorial District of Nasarawa State. and I still remain a horse rider. Mr. Nominee and members of your team as nominees as well, I congratulate all of you. And your resumes speak for all of you. And most of the sensitive and concerned issues around and about Central Bank of Nigeria vis-a-vis economic development of Nigeria have been talked about by my colleagues. But I still there are two areas that I need to take you on. One, monopoly. Monopoly, we all know, stifles growth and development. What is your team, you and your team, ready to do in collaboration and synergy with your colleagues in the fiscal side to ensure that monopoly is dealt away with in the system? Because the potentials that Nigeria has, we are supposed to have nothing less than 50 Dangotes competing around the globe, 50 Boas, 50 $50 and more. And it is centrally to do with you. Central Bank is the nucleus in collaboration with the fiscal sector of the economy. The second question I have for you is that the informal sector plays a very germane role in the socio-economic development of every system. And in particular, our informal sector is still not integrated into the mainstream of our economic agenda. What will you do differently to ensure? And this informal sector slash the youth, stand at nothing less than 60%. So if 60% of 200 million Nigerians are not, or 60% is not integrated into the mainstream of the economic agenda, plans or activities of the economy, then it means we are yet to get there. These are the two I have for you, Mr. Nominee, and your colleagues.
We have to be careful so that we don't become mouth players of football. Because if we play football better than the players of the field, our outsiders. So really, the distinguished Senator Nedwoko, immediately after you, the leader will say something.
Thank you, Chairman, and my colleagues. I'm going to focus slightly on areas that we have not heard others talk about. I am concerned about new colonialism in Africa. I am concerned about continuously having our foreign reserves in those countries that are quietly determining what happens in Nigeria. We have foreign reserves in America. Most of the French colonies or colonized countries have foreign reserves in France. I'm going to ask you this, because we really need to start looking inwards in Africa. How do we generate, how do we grow our economies? We have all the resources. We have all that we need to make a difference in the world. But until we stop relying on huge foreign exchanges, we are not going to achieve that. So I'm going to ask, will you be willing to consider returning our foreign reserves to Nigeria, for instance, and allow our commercial banks to manage the foreign reserves? That is one question. Secondly, I would want to know whether at any point you will be supportive of a policy to have a common currency in Africa. Is it something that you'll be willing to support? Because if we have a common currency in Africa, I'm sure that we can do a lot better than we are doing now, instead of relying exclusively, almost exclusively, on having our economy linked to the dollar. But this is what is causing the slide. The daily slide is caused by the heavy reliance on US dollars. So I'm just wondering if at some point we as a nation will be prepared to become more economically independent instead of this over-reliance on American US dollars. Thank you, Mr. President.